Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock alongside John Ramdeen and Robin Black. A lot of interesting news coming out of UFC 159 this past weekend. Right at the top, Jon Jones retaining the light heavyweight championship over Chael Sonnen. Afterwards, Dana White revealing an interesting fact that Anderson Silva contacted White right after the fight, requesting a future fight. Would not say who with. I'm sure that that one Anderson Silva is looking at Michael Bisping right now.
Yeah, of course. Or Belcher. Maybe he wants to fight Alan Belcher.
Well, one guy he's clearly not looking at is Chris Weidman on July the 6th and kind of already planning for a fight afterwards. I think that, listen, I'm still picking Anderson Silva in that fight, but it just seems that you can sense momentum for a guy, and I think Chris Weidman might have it here on July the 6th.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think that's because the media talks about how awesome Chris Weidman is. He's 9-0. He could be the future. He's stylistically. He's got a great matchup for Anderson Silva, but we're forgetting Anderson Silva is still one of the pound-for-pound best. He's one of the pound-for-pound best because he doesn't neglect the mental game. He doesn't neglect any aspect of mixed martial arts. He's going to go into this fight against Chris Weidman very, very prepared. We know he signed a 10-fight contract, so he's got to kind of lay things out, and he's got to look for the biggest fights. And a fight with Jon Jones would be absolutely humongous for Anderson Silva.
Yeah, but to John's point, you don't start talking about the fight after the fight in front of you. You got an undefeated stud who's got skills in all the areas that on paper, in theory, you're slightly lower than your striking, and you got to deal with him. He's mentally super strong. Chris Weidman is a real legit threat.
The only thing is, I understand what you're saying, but in theory and on paper, Chael Sonnen was supposed to take Jon Jones down at will.
Yeah,
things don't happen on paper in the cage, right?
Yeah, it's true, but they tend to happen more when you look past them. So, that's a good point.
In terms of how the light heavyweight title picture shapes up right now, and obviously this is somewhat contingent on Jones and rehabbing from this compound fracture, but shouldn't be too significant of an injury. He's throwing out the name Alexander Gustafsson. Lyoto Machida was also in New Jersey on the weekend, pushing hard for a rematch with Jon Jones. What makes sense right now for Jon Jones?
Well, I mean, Dana White has said that Daniel Cormier, if he would offer him the fight, if he's willing to drop from heavyweight to go down to 205 pounds, they would give him the immediate title shot. And I think that's a fight that makes sense. I think, you've got some interesting stories. This guy was the captain of the Olympic wrestling team, trains with one of the best camps in the world, as well as with the heavyweight champion. I can understand how the UFC would get behind this guy. Great story, and they could really promote the hell out of it. I understand why Jon Jones wants Alexander Gustafsson. He's young, he's rangy, he's flashy, and again, it's youth versus youth. So I get why the champion would want to fight with Gustafsson.
I think Gustafsson is a much easier fight because he's kind of like Jon Jones, only not as good at any of these areas. He uses his reach really well. He's kind of creative, but not at a Jones level of creativity or reach or striking or wrestling. So for Jones, that makes a lot more sense. The Cormier fight is really interesting because you're only going to get one shot at it. You're going to have to fight this guy at some point if you're ever going to fight for the 205-pound title. And in theory, you go, well, I'll go in the gym and I'll work a little harder and improve. But Jon Jones is still improving anyway. So if you're going to get a shot, take it now and go for it.
Well, when it comes to the heavyweight picture, I think May 25th becomes a really important date. Not only is Cain Velasquez defending the gold on that card against Antonio Silva, I think that's when Daniel Cormier is going to make the decision based on the result there of whether he's going to go down to 205 or stick around at heavyweight. A lot of interesting parts. Also on the card, though, Junior Dos Santos takes on Mark Hunt. I argue that Mark Hunt wins that fight somehow. He gets a title shot at that point. That is 5 in a row. You don't agree?
Sure.
5 in a row.
I get it.
What kind of streak are you going to get at heavyweight?
I totally get it. And if he beats Junior Dos Santos, sure, he should get that fight.
Of course.
But it's very unlikely that Mark Hunt is going to be able to beat Junior Dos Santos. You're like, I know, I disagree, but I think Junior Dos Santos is going to be smart. I think he's going to use some wrestling skills. We've seen that he's got excellent counter wrestling, and I think he's going to be able to put this fight down to the ground if striking doesn't go his way. He's very intelligent in terms of mixed martial arts striking. I know your boxing coach isn't too impressed with his stand-up abilities, but he's proven to be very effective.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument that Junior Dos Santos is not as good of a boxer as he believes he is, and as some people in the MMA world believe he is. Also, Mark Hunt is no longer any slouch on the ground, and he will be committed to winning that fight. And Dos Santos is coming off a loss, the worst performance of his career, mentally tough to deal with. If you're going to take him down right now, if you're going to knock him off that pedestal, now's the time. And if Mark Hunt does it, Mark Hunt for the title.
I think what's cooler is they should just scrap that fight with Junior Dos Santos and Mark Hunt. Roy Nelson wasn't hurt. Mark Hunt versus Roy Nelson. Are we in for that?
That's the fight Roy Nelson wants.
Yeah, why not? I understand.
And I think the winner of that easily gets a title shot at the end of that. I mean, you're talking about two guys that are just knocking dudes out left, right, and center. It's an interesting division right now that is starting to build up some contenders. But at the forefront is Antonio Silva challenging Cain Velasquez, which I think is a really tough fight to market. I mean, how do you even position this? Do you even use highlights from the first fight?
I think you position it as you sell Cain Velasquez. This is one of the great heavyweights. It's a new generation of heavyweight. This is his background. Show explosive shots of him with huge takedowns, nice, counter left hooks that he landed on Big Nog. All of these kinds of things, and you just show that he is the heavyweight Jon Jones. He's a different style. He's a different body type, but he is the great heavyweight in the world, and you market him that way.
And for Bigfoot Silva, it's the same thing with Cain Velasquez losing to Junior Dos Santos. It's like it was a misstep. Bigfoot came back with his stoppages of Overeem, and you show him beating Fedor Emelianenko. I think this is a very easy sell, but they have to do the right things to do so.
One other quick note coming out of this past Saturday was Sarah McMahon making her UFC debut, looking very good against Sheila Gaff. Interesting spot for her she finds herself in right now, because essentially the earliest she could be looking at getting that title shot is a full year from now, when you figure that Ronda Rousey and Kat Zingano won't fight till December. It's an interesting spot, and to me that is such a, the promotion really writes itself if everything aligned and you could get Ronda Rousey and Sarah McMahon.
Sure, I agree, but I mean, if I'm Sarah McMahon, it's like, well, I'm fighting in the UFC. Let's just focus on that right now. Ronda Rousey's got Kat Zingano. Who knows when that fight's going to happen? So the most important thing is to look ahead to her next fight. And I think that she just has to improve, because although she did look okay, she didn't look great in this performance against Gaff. So she has to round out some skills. I talked to Firas Zahabi, and he says that this girl is a hard worker and she's down to earth. So she just has to keep improving her skills.
Bang on. This year's perfect for her. She's not ready yet. 1 year from now, 2 more wins, she'll totally be ready.
There you go. More Fight News Now Extra is coming your way, so don't go anywhere.